Welcome to Venezuela Insider, the only place in Venezuela for expats, digital nomads, entrepreneurs, investors, travelers, and related internationals. For more information, venezuelainsider.com.
Today we are going to talk about wealth inequality in Venezuela. And on Venezuela's case is very, very extreme. The other day I showed the graphics of the Gini coefficient in Venezuela. I'm gonna discuss it again. The Gini coefficient is the macroeconomic term or indicator that you use in order to measure inequality in any given country. Now, that a country is equal or unequal, that doesn't mean it's rich or poor. But in most cases, it brings some socioeconomic unease. Well, you have a Gini coefficient that goes from 0 to 1. Usually, the more equal egalitarian nations have a measurement a little bit over 0.2, and the countries that are more unequal have something close to 0.4. In case of Venezuela, the last time it was measured, is over 0.6. That means it's a lot of inequality. And if you see the graph of the Gini coefficient, the inequality is measured by something in economics that is called as the Lorenz curve. And the Lorenz curve here in Venezuela is very, very, very big. Now, Venezuela has always been unequal. Well, kinda, yes. Not as much as right now, but usually on the 50s, 60s, and 70s, Venezuelans had a very high standard of living, and that brought a lot of migrants from all over the world. Yeah, Venezuela received millions of migrants from Western Europe. At the moment, Western Europe was not as hot, just after World War II. But for many parts of the world, on the 70s, many people from Middle East, mostly people from Lebanon and Syria. They had a civil war back then. Also, other people from Latin America. There was a lot of dictatorships at the moment on Latin America. Venezuela was on a full democracy starting the 60s. And people, of course, from China, people from Asia, so from all over the world, and actually people from the States and Canada on a lesser degree. But people from all over the world like to come to Venezuela. And also a lot of people from Colombia that at that moment, especially on the 70s and 80s, it was a lot of turmoil regarding Colombia, about the drugs and the situation. Colombia has never been a rich country per se, so they always have some kind of issues, most likely related to drug trafficking, stuff like that, Pablo Escobar, that kind of stuff. Well, and what happened is, on just a few decades, there was a lot of inequality. So you see a lot of rich neighborhoods. Venezuela was very rich in the 80s, and you see a lot of people who were traveling all over the world. I mean, people live in Caracas and Maracaibo and travel to Miami just for the weekend, and they do it all the time. People traveling a lot to Margarita Island. People traveling to Europe, of course. We had the Concorde flight. I mentioned that a couple of times. Just a handful of countries had access to the Concorde flights. You know, the Concorde, the supersonic flight. Was a very high end trip that you will take. Only rich people take it. And Caracas was one of the few destinations of the Concorde back in the 80s. So that created a situation of extreme inequality back then. And of course, the people with the shorter end of the stick, they were not very pleased. But I have to say that at the moment, Venezuela had a lot of opportunities, maybe not for everybody, but for most people, we had free college. And by the way, I'm a libertarian, but contrary to most libertarians say that free college is going to be bad. In Venezuela, was very good, but for strategic careers, for STEM degrees, medicine, stuff like that, not for graphic design. By the way, I'm not bashing my graphic design. I need graphic design for my content. Anyway, and what happened is many people, like many people who are not successful, most of the time it's not their fault, but most of the time it's also their fault. But all the time it's going to be their fault, they want or not. And they start blaming, the politicians that were very corrupt back then. We have, for instance, Carlos Andrés Perez that already passed away, so who cares? This period in Venezuela politically was called like the Cuarta República or the Fourth Republic. Started on the 60s and ended on 98 when Hugo Chavez got elected. So there's a lot of bad things that creating the situation that the Chavismo took over again. I'm not absolving the blame from the Chavismo with this, but the Fourth Republic has a lot of the blame for the current situation. Just that fact. Well, but they were very good managing the oil industry. Okay, very good. Don't want to get too political. The situation is what it is. And also that translates to social turmoil, social issues. At the 90s, Venezuela actually was, there was a lot of uncertainty. I'm talking the personal safety wise, a lot of crime rates. The crime rates were higher and higher. So Venezuela was not a safe place on the 90s. I have to remember that. And got a little bit worse after the Chavismo, but it wasn't that bad. It's not like Venezuela in the 90s, just before the Chavismo, was safe. So a lot of things going on, and that rattled the cage a lot and lot and a lot and a lot and a lot and a lot. And that, of course, created the opportunity for the arrival, the coming of Hugo Chavez. And I'm gonna finish with the political side of the video right here. Now, how is the extreme inequality right now? Well, what happened, of course, after the socialism, when you see the money on the street, you still can see it, not to a degree. Well, what happened is after that, the country got destroyed. First, the non-oil industries, and then the oil industry, and happened the migration and the hyperinflation, and so on and so on. So many people got impoverished, and even people from high class got impoverished. But after that, everything, after the dust settles, here in Venezuela, you see there is a lot of extreme inequality, and most people that are, let's say, rich, yet again, the oligarchs, the Venezuelan oligarchs, the people close to the government, from both sides of the aisle. You have the old money, the people, who made money in the 70s, in the 80s, and now their sons and their grandsons have the businesses and the assets, very good. The shady people that I spoke a couple of times, imagine Joe Pesci being a Venezuelan. That's the kind of people that I talk about. And also people who did it fair and square. I'm seeing people who make some money, some financial success with actually very practical businesses that I'm terrible at it. That's why I don't do it. I'm gonna do a specific video just on that regard on a future occasion. But then, of course, a couple of successful lawyers, a couple of successful engineers, some very successful lawyers and dentists, and some small entrepreneurs that make something happen. Of course, some celebrities, influencers, and so on that, but most people are impoverished. Actually, according to some data, only 7% of the Venezuelan working population makes over $300 per month, let alone the people who make thousands or the people who make millions. So it's a sad situation, but what we have right now is that we have a great country right now in Venezuela that most people cannot fully enjoy. And that's actually the sad part of being a Venezuelan, that we have a beautiful country, but right now, the status quo right now is that in order to enjoy it, you have to be on a you have to cover some specific financial threshold in order to truly enjoy it. And that's the sad part about the extreme inequality that we have in Venezuela.
Thank you for watching Venezuela Insider. Please like, share, and subscribe. Follow us on social media. If you want to work with us, venezuelainsider.com. Thanks again, and have a nice day.